Cypress Hill is coming off dropping an album produced by Black Milk, if I understand correctly, the entire joint. Shout out to my man Trox, who told me this is a good record. I actually want to listen to it because I'm a huge Black Milk fan. We've been talking about producers the last couple of weeks, so I'm excited to hear what the production talking about. But
you'd always tell Black Milk beat when you hear the yeah.
Yeah, he's a beast. Hey, if y'all voting, he better make the list. I'm just saying. You know, we don't want no foolishness going on. But I want to read a quote to you all about what B-Real said as it relates to hip hop no longer being a old man's game. He says it's for whoever and those.
What did he actually say?
Old man's game.
Is what the thing I have written here is B-Real says hip hop isn't a young man's sport. What is the actual quote? I'm
about to read. He says it really isn't a young man's game, is what he said. That's what he said.
All right.
So, but the quote that I pulled that I wanted to read, let me find it. I'll just add it. He says it's for whoever and those who hold on to the passion for it. And if you keep razor sharp, our school, the gold school, is what he called his era. We continue to work even past the so-called prime. Everybody continues to work, and it's like playing a sport. The more you train, the better you get at it. The more you do it, the more you become innate, and it's second nature. So I'm from the belief, I've said this before, hip hop is a young man's game. Hip hop is a young man's game, and I've said that over and over again. But of late, when you see artists like Snoop, and you think about how old Rick Ross is, 2 Chainz is, these guys aren't 29. And Nas, you see Nas, we always talk about Nas, quote unquote, aging gracefully.
How old were they when they started?
Well, I mean,
start there.
Nas was in his teens.
Nas was in his teens. Yep.
Snoop was 20.
20.
Rick Ross, he may not have been. He was probably 20 something, but he had
late 20s.
He had ghostwriting credentials before he made it out. I mean, all these people you just named started young.
Big Boy.
They were still making music. When they signed their deal.
No, but what I'm saying is they're still relevant now. Is what I think was what B-Real saying. They've sharpened their skills and stayed relevant in their lane.
I can dig it, but think of how many people did the same exact thing when they came out, and are they still around? They were just very good at what they did. I'm with people saying, and I'm a champion of MCs that can hold their own at an older age. I don't see anything wrong with it, but I still don't think it's an old man's game. It's a game in itself. I mean, being hip is a young thing. Hip is part of the word hip hop.
That is true.
So in order for you to make it, you had to be hip at something, and then continue that prosperity on, which would your style, your uniqueness, your musicality is what's going to keep you in the game. Just being old doesn't keep you in the game. I mean, this is the first Cypress Hill album since when?
I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'd have to look it up.
So I can't really say that it's not a young man's game, because it's always going to be a young man's game. Because you actually need the youth to carry the torch in order to keep it alive. I'm not
mad at that, and I understand from the standpoint of the word hip. I guess we talk about hip hop. I get that part. 3 Stacks said that, so I get that part. I think what he's looking at is the fact that some of these the guys that are his, quote unquote from his school, like you look around and you see a lot of them and they're still prospering, I believe is what he was trying to say.
No.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, they're probably eating off their
you got define prospering, because we don't
residuals, but they're not out here still recording.
I disagree. I think there's a lot of guys that are that age that still have cult followings that tour, and just because we don't see them and the streaming numbers aren't crazy.
Are they headliners on these tours?
I mean, just because, for example, if you have a tour where you go through 10 cities and it's in venues that hold 2,000 people, that doesn't mean that you're not headlining a successful tour. So we'd have to define what a successful tour is and who's on that and how that works to me. Because just because it's not selling out arenas doesn't mean it's not a successful tour, in my opinion.
Look, hip hop is a young man's game. It is, because for you to get hot and the work you got to put in, you cannot, like, we talk about Nas, we talk about Big Boy, we talk about Snoop. These people are legends, okay? And once again, to Terry's point, they got on some of them when they were teenagers. Now, the perception that it's a young man's game, I know a lot of that people have a different concept of that. Because, you know, if you think about hip hop in the 80s and 90s, you know, there were people who, you know, you thought they were basically washed by the time they got to be 27, 28 years old, because they, you know, when we think about Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, EPMD, LL Cool J, these guys, they were grown-ups and men to us, but a lot of these guys were teenagers. You know,
LL
and
was,
so
what, 16 when he signed his first?
17?
you know, so
Yeah.
you know, think
That's
about
true.
it. By the time they got to be 26, it was like, are you still doing this for real? Like, we thought about rappers in retirement and people being barely in their early 30s. You know, when Too Short talking about he was going to retire. You know, so we're this is the first time.
Too Short is 50s. That's crazy.
This is the first time where we've actually seen, okay, rappers who are well into their 40s, some of them knocking on or past 50, who are making records that we actually talk about. But this is a relatively new idea, because it used to be like, if you even in the 90s, it'd say, oh, it's the Sugar Hill Gang. It'd be like, oh, wow, the guy, like, do you know how old the Sugar Hill Gang were by like 95, 96?
yeah.
You know, they were doing,
We was in high school.
they were doing tours with Sinbad, you know, in the Caribbean at that point. And that's not to diss, because they were still out here getting money. But, you know, you have to have a perspective about this. You know, when you listen to the radio, is, you know, as much as I love the new Nas and the new Joel Ortiz, it's not Slaughterhouse. That has no chance of getting on the radio.
Right.
You know, it's still the young, even somebody like Gucci Mane, who makes club music, even somebody like 2 Chainz or Rick Ross, they're not playing those records on the radio anymore.
But nobody's playing anything on the radio.
That's
anymore.
that's my whole point.
That
Thank
matters
you.
to us.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. We don't listen to the radio. We're all too old to care about what's on the radio.
I don't.
You know,
I don't.
I don't know what's on. You know, the only reason I have any inkling of what happens on the
He beat me
radio
to
is
it.
because I still work in nightclubs that cater to people under the age of 29.
Jump in there, Long.
Right. No, I think I see where he's coming from. I feel like we might be overanalyzing the statement, because I feel like the stigma around being old in hip hop is always like, once you reach a certain age, go do something else type.
Right.
Is what it is. And I think what he's probably meaning by this statement, without knowing any more about, you know, what we're talking about, you know, what he actually said in the moment when he said it, is just probably that, you know, like, you can have a long-term career as an older person in hip hop, and you can sustain. And to Mike, you know, Maja's point, you don't have to sell out packed arenas to be successful. You can. And maybe you started when you're young, and maybe you're building up to reach a certain point, and maybe you haven't reached your plateau yet until you're older. 2 Chainz is a perfect example of that, right? So I don't know. I feel like when I think about this, I do think that it's a young person's game still. I do agree with that aspect of it, because that's how everything's going to recycle, and it's going to keep moving.
It has to.
But at the same time, I feel like we're getting into a space where it's starting to be more normal and regular, that the older hip hop acts aren't frowned upon as much, aren't made fun of as much, There's there's a lane for it now. I think.
like how you
and I think
said
that's
that.
kind of created.
It's
So I think
because hip hop is relatively new in that sense, that there was never an opportunity for older people to be participating in
Good
it.
point. That's a good point.
that's partially.
That's a good point.
I agree with that. I also think that it's probably related to how we all consume stuff. You know, like it's just not like, if we want to listen to those older artists that we know, we can go and find them now. Like we don't have to wait on the radio. We don't have to watch a final countdown on BT or MTV, whatever. You know, it's like
I like the way that you said it, with it being more acceptable now, and there's a slight shift in that, versus, you know, taking it in the literal sense, like Demore and Terry saying about it still like not being a young man's sport. Because I get it. Like,
It's not exclusively a young man's
right.
sport.
Three Stacks said it. He was
right.
like, it's hip hop. I don't feel hip anymore. He said that.
right.
You know what I'm saying? He said that's one of the things that scared him. He didn't want to be, you know, the old dude that was just blacking out. So I get what y'all saying. I just think with boy
Mace
B-Real,
just showed us
oh my
a
god,
terrible example
That's
did.
an example
of being older in
did.
hip hop
He
and
did.
not having a clue of what's going on out here.
that diss record is beyond out of touch.
Well, I mean, and
That's
also
facts.
But there's levels to it, right?
Yeah.
Mace hasn't been active.
Mace, you know,
That's
You
true.
know,
That's true.
when's the last time you heard from Mace other than this? Like, he doesn't.
I couldn't tell you.
You know, that album, the Welcome Back album was what, 2003?
Yeah,
You know, and he tried to get on with G Unit a couple years later, and so that still puts it at, you know, more than 15 years ago.
Time
Yeah.
flies.
You know,
When
and
you're Mace.
especially time flies at hip. You know, there was a time we had a lot of times just have to adjust our perspective. I remember it was a big deal when Run DMC came out with Down with the King
Y'all did too.
because that was their 5th album, and
The
at
video
that point,
was cold too.
at that point, they were the only hip hop act who had put out 5 studio albums.
Yeah.
Like now, that's nothing.
Yeah,
There
people
people-
would do that in 2 years.
Yeah. You know, so perspectives have to change.
Yeah.
The culture is still relatively young.
Yeah.
Not as far as like who's in it, but just the time that it's actually been something that you could say is a tangible culture, you know, and then, you know, from the time in
Constantly
it's-
evolving too.
Yeah, but even from the time when you're talking about, you know, that first hip hop party that '𝗏𝗲 threw,
Yeah.
from the time where you're like, oh, this is something we might be able to see on TV and the radio.
Yeah.
It was another 10, 15 years
Yeah.
after that.
After
Yeah.
that,
So,
that's real.
you
That's
know,
real.
we're still like, a lot of times hip hop is still trying to find its way. You know, as much as it's been accepted in the mainstream, things still happen so quickly
Yeah.
that
rules are still being written.
yeah, exactly.
True.
Or rewritten because the rules from 10 years ago have nothing to do with what's going on today.
Right.
Like we always say in this, you can't get around it. It's evolution.
You know, because let's think about it. Nobody sells anything anymore.
Nah.
Yeah. We just talking about, you know, Slaughterhouse now. What they said.
I saw Method Man. He was talking about how are these young boys getting all this money? They don't sell
with
anything.
Mad Hoffa, yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I was sold records. People went to the store to buy my records.
Yeah.
Where are these how are these young boys getting on
You
these
know what?
private
He's
airplanes?
like private plane.
Hey,
Yeah.
I just saw I saw a small clip of Russ talking about this, you know, on TikTok recently, and he was just like, you know, he's like this myth
Yeah.
that you have to tour to make money in hip hop. He's like, I don't tour. He's like, I make all my money on streaming. He was like, if you do it right, you can make money on music.
More
on
power-
music. That's how I make my money. And I
More
was
power
just
to
like,
him.
So
All of it on streaming.
That's what that's what I'm looking
he
at.
said most of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Him and NBA Youngboy. And
They're
whoever.
anomalies.
Wouldn't you think it'd be more towards touring?
Well, that's what
merch
we,
or something.
what-
Something
Yeah, or
tangible.
merch, yeah.
that's what we were always told, right? But
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Because we've looked at the numbers that you can make on streaming. He must be streaming an awful lot.
you can. I mean, look. I mean, even I had a decent month, couple months ago, and that was a reasonable amount of streaming money for 2 songs, streaming decently well.
Yeah.
It was like 2 songs was like, I think between 2 songs it was 250,000 streams or something, and it was a reasonable amount of money.
well, just
So
I mean,
but
I
think
hope-
I mean,
about
not
it.
like balling on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not like
we know,
Bugatti
yeah.
money, but
Yeah, we know, yeah.
it was-
But when
it
you-
was
nice little
enough.
change.
when you
Take
go
that
on
change.
to YouTube and like you'll see certain, and because you know people say that's all people get paid anytime something gets played on YouTube, but then you see it's been played 600,000, 1.5 billion times.
Yeah,
Like
that's the part.
it, you know, I looked at what was it, Still DRE from Dr. Dre's official page,
Yeah.
and that video, not even counting any of the streaming numbers,
Yeah.
just crossed 1 billion streams.
It probably gets played every day. in
Yeah.
Yeah,
some
because it was
way,
like
shape,
after
or
the Super
form.
Bowl, it went up by like 200 million
Yeah.
streams.
I ain't even think about that.
Oh, it
And then
probably
they
gets
don't
paid.
get paid for the Super Bowl. That's how they get paid.
Yeah,
That spike.
you know, and sometimes it's when things happen in culture, like when,
Yeah,
when the
absolutely.
New Edition movie came out, all of a sudden everyone wanted to learn the routine from If
Yeah.
It Isn't Love, so it
They
shot
running,
up.
You know they running them
Crazy.
up now with them being on tour.
But it's
Streams and stuff running
it's
them up.
content and content claiming content now. It's not just like artists can not only can you monetize like your music, but if you haven't if you have your own platform and you're live on it, then you can share those clips like we do, right? But if you have a massive audience, you can make like bazillions of money off of just like clips of you.
Your
and-
own
and-
content.
And even if somebody, you know, like I remember back on Bringing Down the Band, I shared that a while ago I shared that long. It was like 8 minutes of Snoop streaming.
Oh
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That got like 1.5, almost 2 million views on it. Right.
Yeah.
Which I could monetize for a while because it was just a random stream. But eventually they came and got it. Snoop's people came and got it.
Okay.
So anything with like Snoop's likeness on it, they can go on and just snatch it up. And if you go and you look in the content YouTube, like the descriptions, you'll see like monetized by such and such.
Yeah.
The amount of monetized streams on all the different platforms, like
It's out there. Huh?
People are making money just
if
off
you
these
have a big
interviews.
enough name,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can do well if you have a big enough name.
I was taken back a little bit by that comment about Russ, but then to your point when you talked about the 2 records for you ratchet that up on the scale. Maybe he is.
Go and look on YouTube.
I mean, it's not a lot. Like the amount of money isn't a lot, but
per stream.
per stream. No.
yeah.
It's not even a lot. Even like like 250,000 YouTube plays isn't a lot of money, but it's reasonable amount. Like if you're like a Snoop Dogg or you're a Dr. Dre or you're a Russ, like that stuff adds
Like
up.
People,
streams,
these
bruh.
That's a day.
You gotta understand,
You know what I
these
mean?
people
Yeah.
are not just doing a couple thousand or a couple million here and there. They're doing billions.
Yeah.
They're doing
It says 1B by the amount of times this has been viewed.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber, I saw he was knocking on 2 billion streams just on YouTube
Money.
Nice check, ain't it?
for one song.
That's 1,000 millions.
Yeah. Whole lot of.
Hey, well, get your
Whole
paper,
lot.
man.
Hey.
Get your paper.
Don't let it make you.
But it's
All right.
also about sometimes who owns the, because I don't know enough about Up Rocks to say anything about them,
Yeah.
but I'll see some classic hip hop videos that aren't under a certain artist, but they're on Up Rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, or certain people, if say like for Kid and Play, I don't even know if Select Records is still a thing. That's who they're
Right.
assigned to. So it's just random people who've uploaded Kid and Play's content.
Like NBA YoungBoy wasn't getting paid off all his streams initially.
Man,
His record
that's
company
terrible.
Was getting that money.
That's tough.
Yeah, that's just terrible.
Well, the trick with the content ID stuff too is you have to own everything. Like you can't, like the stuff I kind of mentioned last week, and like I can go into the details on it, but like you can't use samples. You can't use, like you have to own everything in it.
Like,
Otherwise,
come-
you can't even monetize it. So
Mhm.
hip hop runs into some issues there sometimes.
Yeah. Because it might be between the songwriting and the sampling.
Samples and
That's how people that do review shows get mixed up.
it's in the fair use stuff, but
Is it?
It is, but at the same time, the content ID is automatic, so it's a tricky process.
There's not much you can
It's
do.
super.
a lot of
It's
times.
super tricky. Yeah, it's super tricky. Yeah,
Because people try all kinds of tricks, like I'll flip the image or
yeah. They try.
When
Dim
they-
it, brighten it.
When they come get you, they gonna find a way to come get you.
Mm.
You better play by the rules, or they coming for you. You look up and you'll have a check.
no, you'll have a strike.
we wouldn't know anything about that.
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Clean program over here.